Good evening. You are listening to 105.9 FM WOMMLP The Radiator, coming to you straight out of beautiful Burlington, Vermont. It's Rocket Shop. Sitting in for Tom Proctor, I'm your host, Nico Zackman. And with me is our special guest tonight, the Constables. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
One thing we like to do is kick off the show is start with a song. What do you got?
We've got a song called Green Mountain Farmer that I wrote a number of years ago about all of the wonderful people growing food in this state.
A lot of great food in this state.
Shall we kick it off?
Let's do it.
many-colored birds. And though it may take some time, nothing can stop the rhyme that we make when we work in the dirt. Oh, I'm just another tale of a green mountain farmer, stone broken, busted on a back mountain road. We ain't got much money, us green mountain farmers, but if hard work were pennies, then we'd have a rich man's load. Yes, if hard work were pennies, then we'd have a rich man's load.
You just heard the Constables with their song Green Mountain Farmer. So, in your bio, you guys describe yourself as a roots rock / Americana act with elements of bluegrass, alt rock, and hip hop. That latter genre kind of surprised me when I first read it. But how'd you first get into hip hop, and how do you incorporate that into your music?
Well, we're working on doing some more rhythmic stuff with a lot of the banjo that we're going to bring out later on. And I actually got into hip hop because my cousin grew up in New Hampshire, which is not the place that you might think of being the center of hip hop. But he was hugely into hip hop, and when I was growing up, I made a lot of fun of him for it because I thought he was being kind of nerdy about it. And then he showed me, I think Common was the first rap artist that he made me listen to, and I really started to understand just the complexities of the rhythms and
Right.
how interesting the melodies were in some of the stuff. And that's kind of how I got into it. But Dan's been listening to hip hop a lot longer than I have.
I am indeed older than Ben. So I moved to Vermont in 1986. And my friend here in town, Mr. Freeman, good evening, Mr. Freeman, introduced me to the Fat Boys. And
Awesome.
I've been a fan ever since.
Awesome. It's funny because, you know, my first experience with hip hop was kind of like the mid 2000s, like pop rap of like, you know, Chingy and Bow Wow, formerly Lil Bow Wow, and them Franchise Boys. So kind of a far cry from Common, but you know, it's sort of different from when I you know, from the older stuff that was more kind of politically charged and more socially charged. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you introduced me to Killer Mike at one point, and that really reinvigorated my my interest in hip hop.
Waiting on Run the Jewels 5 right now, for sure.
I'm a big fan of Run the Jewels. And yeah, Killer Mike is one of my favorite rappers right now, and I mean, I'm arguably rap is kind of like the genre of music I listen to the least now. I'm more into like, you know, rock and metal and like, you know, all those like, you know, more aggressive styles of music. But yeah, no, I'm a fan of rap. I try to listen to it as much as I can. The bluegrass parts, how'd you kind of get into like bluegrass and alt rock?
So bluegrass is kind of how I really started when I started playing seriously, when I wasn't just learning Tom Petty songs, you know, when I first started playing 1-4-5 chords. I went to Sterling College in Craftsbury Common up in the Kingdom, and had a bunch of friends that just were really into bluegrass, and I just love the fast rhythms and all the fun. I mean, it's just fun to play that. And to make the connection to hip hop, actually, is one of the bands that I really got into when I was there. Was I think they're called Gangster Grass. They have an album called Rappalachia, and I loved that mix of two genres that you wouldn't expect to be together and really kind of work. Some of their songs maybe not so much, but most of their songs are really, really cool.
So it's like a nice little experiment.
Yeah. That the show Justified, if you've seen that show, the opening to that is done by that band, and it's just a really cool, you know, merging of kind of two types of music that came out of really, you know, disenfranchised and economically disadvantaged cultures, and I think it's really cool to see that mix, especially considering how different those cultures can seem to be in this country.
I love when artists like fuse kind of disparate genres together to make like new forms of music. I mean, extreme metal isn't exactly, a widespread, a widely liked genre. But I think there's this band called Genghis Tron. They're actually formed in my hometown, and they fuse like extreme metal and electronic music, and it's a weird hybrid, but it somehow works.
Have you heard of the Who? Not. Of course, you've heard of the Who with W, but the HU. It's a Mongolian death metal band.
Yes.
I love their stuff.
I haven't listened to much The Who, but I've heard a lot about them. It's like it's like Mongolian folk metal, isn't it?
Yeah, they play like a horsehead fiddle and like all standard like Mongolian folk instruments, and then like just plug them in, turn the gain up, and go. And they did a bunch of Metallica covers that got them really famous, but they have these like, what are they? They're like Mongolian like war songs that they do as metal, and it just it makes you want to go get in a fight somewhere.
Yeah, they have kind of a strong following here in America, which is something that I don't think really expect from a Mongolian folk metal band. But yeah, I mean, and they don't sing in English too, which is really interesting. Yeah. It's like Boris, all of their lyrics are in Japanese, but they're really popular here in the United States. Boris is like this experimental band that I've been into for a few years, but yeah. So Ben.
Yes, sir.
This is kind of like a non-music related question, but it says you spend your work days as a river scientist. What exactly does that mean? Is the environment something that you're passionate about?
Yes, I've spent pretty much my entire career, and even before I went to school, actually playing in rivers. I grew up fishing and really learned to love rivers because I wasn't that good at catching fish. So I spent a lot of time looking at rivers and figuring out how water decides to go from one direction to another and stuff like that. And what I've spent most of my time doing is really trying to get generally sea-run fish, but fish like brook trout or salmon. They need to run up the river so that they can lay eggs and continue their life cycle. And one of the major impediments to that is dams, as well as a lot of people don't think, but culverts, where they put in a pipe to get the water from one side of the road to the other. Those are often a big problem for fish to get get upstream. So I spend my work days trying to work with towns to that have these dams or have these undersized and problem culverts to replace the culverts or to remove the dams so that the fish can get from the downstream end to the upstream end and go lay their eggs and continue to have salmon that are running into Lake Champlain and down to the ocean.
That's really, really cool. Do you catch walleye at all?
I have done some walleye fishing, but not very much lately.
Okay. The reason why I asked that is because my dad's side of the family, they're way into fishing, and they're very outdoorsy, and we actually catch walleye, for food.
Yeah, they're one of the best eating fish. They're
tasting fish.
Yeah. Where do they fish?
Minnesota.
Oh, yeah, that's
they're
walleye country.
It's definitely walleye country. I was born there, so I kind of was brought in to try to get into that fishing thing. I'm not much of a fisher generally, but I love to hike and I love certain outdoorsy stuff. But yeah. So we'd love to hear another song. What do you have for us?
So this one is called Happy Days, and this is a song I wrote. So I just recently moved back to Vermont after going to school here. I was working in Maine doing fish stuff on the coast, and I wrote this song. It was one of those songs that just came out all fully formed, which rarely ever happens. I have like 2 songs like that. Normally I write them and then it takes like 5 years to actually finish them. But this one, we were moving, and my wife and I were living in this beautiful in coastal Maine town called Harpswell. And I got this dream job in Vermont, but I didn't want to leave the coast. And this song just kind of popped out as this like feeling of being ecstatic and happy and getting everything that I wanted, but also feeling really sad about leaving a really, really beautiful place.
Yeah. So let's kick us off.
friend. Wish I could hang out with John Prine. I could really learn to craft a rhyme. Happy days are here again. Happy days again. Skies are gray that are turning blue. Always find my way back to you. Whispers murmur from a quiet shore. We don't always have to ask for more. Happy days are here again. Happy days again. Happy days are here again. Happy days again. Happy days are here again. Gonna go have that beer with my friend. I wish all my wishes away. Light a candle on a brand new day. Happy days are here again. Happy days again. Happy days are here again. Happy days again.
That was the Constables with their song Happy Days. Love that little reference to John Prine, such a sublime songwriter who's had an immeasurable influence on contemporary singer-songwriter music. Dan, you seem to have been all over. Your bio mentions that you were raised in Wisconsin and Japan, as well as Vermont. What brought you all the way to Japan?
My parents are academics. The first time over there, my father was working on his doctorate, which is a neat line of it. He does Christian theology from a Mahayana Buddhist philosophical perspective. So you swap out the Greeks and that tradition that's kind of built into most of Christian theology with a more Eastern philosophical point of view and examine the text with that other lens. So
That's awesome. Did your mother do the same thing?
my mother, the second time was for my mother's doctorate. She was working on a translation on a Japanese myth called The Tale of Genji, if I'm right. I hope I'm right. Yes.
She'll tell you if you aren't.
I'm quite sure that's it.
Have you been anywhere in the world other than Japan?
I went to Ireland a couple times when flights were cheap. And that was easy. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Did that have anything to do with bouncing around New Mexico and Maine?
Let's see. Life has had many chapters. I went to New Mexico. Attended St. John's College in Santa Fe, New Mexico as a freshman. It didn't quite work out. Well,
Did you transfer somewhere else?
Yes, and then I wound up at Marlborough College here in Vermont.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I had a kind of a complicated trajectory while I was in college too. I started out at a Landmark College, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's a small private school in Putney, Vermont, and I went there for a year before transferring to the University of New Haven in Connecticut.
Change of
And
scene, huh?
yeah, it was definitely a change, and lot more lot more urban, so a lot more opportunity there for someone who wants to major in music and sound recording, which I did. That's where I got my degree. Definitely a large music scene there. Here it's a bit more low key, but I love that. And and then I moved back here. Who would have thunk it?
We think it's the best place. I think it's the best. Ben may be wistful for Maine. I'm not. I worked at Friendly's for a year. I wouldn't do it again.
Yeah. So Ben, you've been kind of around too. You say that you're a New Hampshire native, but you've called New York, Michigan, Maine, Maryland, and West Virginia home.
I seem to like those M states for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're a Minnesotan, so you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from. Did West Virginia kind of like the old timey music there kind of kind of influence what you do here in Vermont?
Yeah, it's interesting because I started getting into old timey music here in Vermont and listening to Old Crow Medicine Show, Avery Brothers a little bit, and then went down and I thought I was like decent at playing old time music and just picked up the banjo, and I moved down to West Virginia, and like I couldn't hold a candle to the guys that were down there. I'd go out to the bar and there'd be some guy just playing amazing stuff, and he's just like the local guy, is not doesn't have an album out or anything. Just every holler, as they call them down there, has a musician down there. And I learned actually that with the banjo, you've got like three finger style, scrug style, bluegrass. There's all these different styles. And somebody told me that back in the day, like every holler had a different style. So one of them would be like the guy played 2 fingers, and then you go over the next valley and it'd be a guy played 3 fingers, and they'd all argue about which one was better.
Yeah. Are you familiar with John Fahey at all? Is he an influence?
No, not exactly. I mean, I've heard the name, but I've not really listened to a lot of his stuff.
Yeah, he does like a lot of like American kind of guitar based music that I noticed a lot of John Fahey in kind of what you do. I think
sounds like a compliment.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a compliment, and it's Bad Timing by Jim O'Rourke is another great record that I kind of it's more freeform. It's not as much structure as your guys's music, but he's kind of pioneered like the steel string kind of acoustic guitar stuff that John Fahey did. But yeah, so what was your what was your first memory of music?
Oh, honestly, I mean, I can't pick one. Both of my parents played music growing up. My dad plays acoustic guitar. My mom sings and plays guitar. So, I mean, ever since I was a kid, I've always been singing and doing stuff. I mean, I was the kid running around in kindergarten singing songs, and the teacher had to tell me to shut up because they got sick of me singing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
My parents probably wanted to say that, but they were supportive, so they didn't. But
yeah,
I don't. My first thing I remember was listening to the Beatles in like music class in like 3rd or 4th grade, and just being amazed that you could make that kind of sound. And yeah, but I can't really put a finger on my very first memory.
Yeah, can't go wrong with the Beatles.
Yeah.
I remember when I was like a very little kid, for some reason Eleanor Rigby was like my favorite song of all time, despite the really dark subject matter of that song. But yeah, would you describe your music as cathartic at all?
Yeah, I think almost all the songs that I write, and I mean the reason I play is because it feels good, and it, you get that endorphin rush from doing it, and
yeah.
I mean, I can't speak for Dan explicitly, but we're not doing this because we're making tons of money or because it's we're doing it because we have to. We just love playing music and it makes us feel good. And when I sit all day typing on a computer and writing grants, coming home and playing guitar it recharges me so I can do that the next day.
Yeah.
Ben can speak for me. It's fine.
You can speak for yourself just fine.
Well, but you
Mr.
just said
Lawyer.
you just said it.
Right.
Yeah, quite well.
So Dan, do you is your kind of first memory of music falling in love with the stand-up bass in your middle school orchestra program, like it says in your bio?
Oh, well, that's not my first memory. I think I was trying to think. I remember my parents weren't musicians, but they had a record player, and my first memory of music is just the rug in the record player room. And I don't remember which record. They had Magical Mystery Tour, Sgt. Pepper, something by Chicago, Teaser and the Firecat by Cat Stevens, and Carole King's Tapestry. It was one of those.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've always loved music, but I'd say my first memory of course, is Eleanor Rigby. But listening to my parents' CD collection, I sort of my influence, or my start into music was kind of getting into their type of music before starting to kind of branch out into my own kind of music. I'm a big, even though my parents kind of disagree, my parents and I disagree on kind of the extreme metal and noise music that I listen to. I still find a lot of common ground, especially with my mom. She and I are both really into Dave Matthews Band, and they have a new album coming out. Free plug.
Huh.
And yeah, we try to go to their shows every year. But well, I'd say it's time for another song. What you got for us, guys?
This one is called Grounded. We're going to see how well Dan's hands hang. So you all should know I've been pushing Dan to play this upright bass, and Dan is a fantastic bassist. Well, he's used to playing that thing, and we're really pushing his muscle memory here with big bass.
Thanks to my grandmother Guinevere for buying me this bass in 1986.
So this song's called Grounded. And I think it's fairly self-explanatory. It's just kind of a little bluegrassy ditty about trying to keep your feet on the ground.
was Grounded by the Constables. I love that you seem to have found the perfect balance between more rowdy songs like Grounded versus the comparatively relaxed songs like Green Mountain Farmer and Happy Days. Is that intentional for you guys?
Depends on the day.
Depends on what kind of mood you're in?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we like doing fast and fun stuff, and we also know audiences don't like to just want to show up and want to cry the entire set, so.
Yeah. There's specific music for that
Yeah.
I listen to. If I want to just wallow in self-pity,
I keep trying to get him to slow down just so that we can hear I like to hear him sing. So,
Yeah. My question is for Dan. I noticed that you have a electric bass in the background versus the more upright bass that you're playing right now. Would you say there's any what's the difference? How is it different playing the upright bass versus the electric bass? This is coming from someone who wants to learn to play electric bass. But would you say what are the differences?
Same instrument. This is a longer scale, so that's a slight difference.
Like, how does it feel?
It takes a lot more force to play this bass, which is why Ben keeps on apologizing for my hand because he's,
Right.
So otherwise, I mean that's a fretless bass, so it's more or less the same instrument. There's a difference in tone, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But does it? Which one do you enjoy? One instrument more than the other?
It's a relatively new discovery that I am able to at all play this thing. Yes, I'm much more comfortable on that thing, but I'm enjoying getting this out again, and I don't know, we'll see, right?
Yeah, exactly. So your singing style, are you familiar with Steven Seagulls?
No.
They're a bluegrass band from Finland. They went viral with a video of them covering Thunderstruck by AC/DC.
Nice.
And just your voice in the best way possible reminds me of the guy from Steven Seagulls.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Are there any? Would you say there's any other genres that you say are kind of you don't sound like, but you're just kind of influenced by regardless, whether it's other than hip hop or alternative rock?
Yeah, hip hop and alt rock is probably not what influences my vocals. So I grew up in singing in choirs. So like I honestly, probably the biggest influence on my vocals is singing Baroque music when I was in high school. I really liked doing that kind of, those really nice tight harmonies and those really kind of expansive sounds. But I just like singing. I sang a lot of like show tunes, and I went to high school in New York, and then my senior year I transferred to Michigan, and it was an interesting change because in New York you go to these like they have like the all-state choir, or they have these singing competitions where you go and perform the song and they grade you on it, and there you would always do show tunes. You do some kind of Broadway song. And then I moved to Michigan, and it was opera arias. And I was lost. I was completely lost. I was sitting there ready to sing like Porgy and Bess songs, and they're like, "Oh, you got to sing Caro mio ben," and I'm like, I don't know how to do any of that. And
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not. Maybe it's just that I'm not like into like opera and stuff. That I just don't really get it. But there are a lot of people I know, especially in the New Haven, Connecticut area, which is where I went to school, that are into that kind of stuff. Would you say, growing up, that you had like a big music scene to go around, like, concerts and stuff?
Not really. I grew up in upstate New York. Was fairly rural. I was near Ithaca, and I was out kind of in farm country, 30, 40 miles outside of the city. So mostly it was doing that kind of stuff, like singing in choir and doing, all-state competitions and stuff like that. I mean, honestly, I'm kind of ashamed to say, I think my first concert was like Bruce Hornsby in the
That's
range,
cool.
which is not bad, but not.
My dad's a big fan.
I mean, he's good. I actually met him. He's incredibly tall. You've never seen it. He's like 7 feet tall. But
You met Bruce Hornsby.
Yes, I went to what was it? I was going to I think a college visit with my brother, and he was playing at there, and we were at a coffee shop, and this guy who's like 7 feet tall walks in, and my dad's like, "Oh my God, that's Bruce Hornsby."
Yeah. It's always funny, like, the people who you don't expect to look like, how they do, Vince Vaughn is like a huge dude.
Yeah.
And I've actually met Vince Vaughn. I was in Chicago with my dad, and we just ran into Vince Vaughn at a local pancake shop.
Nice.
And it was, everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, that's Vince Vaughn."
Did you introduce yourself?
I did not introduce myself, no, because there were so many people were crowding around him that I didn't have a time to. But yeah, we saw Vince Vaughn.
Nice.
Who's, other than Bruce Hornsby, who's the most famous musician do you think you guys have met?
I met Ron Carter, the bass player. He's pretty famous. I think he's been on more records than any other bass player.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. When I judge fame by if they have their own Wikipedia page or not. But yeah, I
Put that on the list.
On that,
have a Wikipedia page.
I mean, truth be told, anybody can make a Wikipedia page about themselves. But I mean, that's to me is like the prime example of whether you're famous or not. And I've met, no offense. I met some like famous people in the hardcore punk scene, like Jacob Bannon and of Converge, and Steve Brodsky of Cave In. I don't know if is hardcore punk like a style of music that you think you'd be interested in, or like getting elements from.
Well, then the next song we're gonna play, I wouldn't say it's hardcore punk by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a little more in that energy level.
Right.
I've always enjoyed. So a similar experience. One of my good friends in college was huge into hardcore punk. I never really liked it because it was a little too much noise. But after he got me to listen to the Ramones, he got me to listen to some of the early stuff, and I kind of could see the evolution of how it got to where it was.
Yeah.
And then, honestly, he introduced me to Gigi Allen, which is about as hardcore punk as you can get.
Gigi Allen is just way too out there, I
Yeah.
think, for most people to enjoy. I mean, he's more known for his performances than his music, but yeah.
But ironically, I don't like the music really at all, but seeing the kind of that melding of the philosophy almost and that music and what that meant to people, especially with my friend, because he grew up in New Jersey and went to a lot of the early Ramones shows. We went to CBGB's, which was kind of really depressing. We went down and went to CBGB's, the famous punk band. Blondie started there, and a whole bunch of other.
I mean, I'm only 24. I'm too young to remember CBGB, but I'm
Gene Shop now.
Yeah, I know enough about CBGB that it was a really influential kind of punk venue.
Yeah, and he went down there, and we were he wanted to go see it, and he walked in there, and there's all the records on the wall, but they're selling designer jeans for like $100 a pop, and it just feels like the exact opposite of everything punk rock.
Yeah, no, it's punk rock should be like, it's like Blink-182 selling concert tickets for like $600. I just think that's such a rip, but it is what it is.
I've got an idea.
Yeah.
We should sell concert tickets for $600.
Oh yeah, we should.
Yeah.
We gotta find people to buy them, Dan.
All right. Well,
some kind of mailing list. Can't the Russians help us with this?
Well, we'd love to hear another song. What you got for us?
All right, this one's kind of a new one that just fell out.
Whoa!
Sorry.
That's what happens.
Little power
when you plug in a
electronics
banjo
there.
Sometimes, but we've got a plan. It's gonna work out. This one just kind of fell out. It's called "Who Lit the Fire."
Lit the fire.
It sounds like it's in C.
No more.
Fire by the Constables.
Well, that's punk rock for you.
Yeah. I noticed you were kind of like improvising a little bit there. Is improvisation like a big part of like what you do live?
As much as it sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both bonded when we first started playing over just finding the right notes. And
Yeah.
I mean, I can't read music. I think you could read music, but
Slowly.
yeah, I mean, they tried to teach me, but it just never clicked. So for
Yeah.
me, it's pretty much if it sounds right, it works. If it doesn't sound right, I'll slide it up and down until it does.
Yeah, so what's next for you guys? Do you have any upcoming gigs? Where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find us. We've got Instagram and a Facebook page. It's the Constables VT. You can look that up on Instagram or Facebook. It's both the same thing. And as far as gigs coming up, we've got this is a busy week for us. On Friday,
Awesome.
we're playing at Positive Pie in Hardwick.
Ooh.
And we're actually bringing in one of Dan's old band buddies to play some rip-roaring electric. So we're trying out a little bit new sound, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And then Saturday, we're playing at Dirt Church Brewery, which is a really nice small brewery in East Burke in the Kingdom. And then our next gig, I'm playing at Dirt Church again for St. Patty's Day. I think you're going to be doing something else then.
Yeah.
And then we've got another gig.
Well, Essex House and Tavern for everybody hanging out in Island Pond, Vermont, April 27th, 6 to 9.
And then we've got a couple of gigs in April. We don't have exact dates yet, but it's at the St. Johnsbury Distillery. So keep your eye on our socials, and we'll have that stuff posted up.
Cool. Free plug. So, well, that's, I think, all the time we have for tonight. Thank you so much for coming on, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
You've been listening to 105.9 FM, WOMMLP, The Radiator. This has been Rocket Shop. I've been your host, Nico Zackman. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night, y'all.
Woohoo! Yeah.